All right, good morning, everyone. This is taking Monster Hunter Worldwide. Thanks for coming. I know that morning talks are a real bitch to get to, but I appreciate you guys showing up. My name is Andrew Alfonso. I am one of the localization directors at Capcom Japan. Before we begin, I was told to remind you guys to please turn off all your cell phones or put them on manner mode. And we're also going to have, you're also going to get an email sent to you to evaluate this talk, so make sure to do it, especially if you think I'm awesome. Hold on for 1 second, sorry. And my slide is not, oh, there we go, sorry. All right, so today I'm going to give you guys a brief primer about what a localization director does at Capcom. Then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation with the localization of Monster Hunter 4. And then we'll wrap things up by talking about our future goals and key endeavors, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So to briefly introduce myself, I've been at Capcom for about 9 years now. I started off as an English editor working on games like Mega Man Star Force and Devil May Cry 4. Then I transitioned into an English localization lead. I started working on the Street Fighter 4 series and Street Fighter Cross Tekken. And now I'm a localization director working on the Monster Hunter series since Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. And yes, I know that 9 years is a really long time to be at any one company. Sorry. All right, so the localization director at Capcom, we wear a lot of hats. We do a lot of translation, but we also adapt scripts. We also do project management. So we do a lot of things in between. We're responsible for creating and maintaining the budgets and schedules of our games with the help of our localization coordinators and our managers. But at the same time, we have to be involved in the creative process of our titles to make sure everything is going in the right direction. So this position was created a couple years ago during the development of Dragon's Dogma, and since then every major in-house title that Capcom has developed has had a localization director join the development team formally, move to their floor, and work with them until the release of the game. So having this localization director working day-to-day with the team on the same floor and usually right beside the main director, that's one of the reasons why Capcom's localization efforts have dramatically improved over the past couple of years. At Capcom, the localization directors were focused on creating an interesting, stress-free game for the user. We want to make a game that doesn't feel like it's been localized. So when we have someone in Germany picking up our game, we don't want him or her to pick up our game and think, okay, well, Capcom made this game. They did a pretty decent translation from Japanese into German, and yeah, it sounds cool. We don't want them to feel like that. We want them to have a feeling like, wow, Capcom developed this game in Germany for the German user. And, that's what we all strive for as localization directors. Okay, so we got the basics out of the way now. Let's talk about Monster Hunter. So we started the localization of 4 Ultimate in November of 2013. And we were tasked to have this game ready to ship by the end of fiscal 2014. If you're not a money person, that means March 2015 for Capcom. So as a localization director, I had a couple of things I personally wanted to achieve. I wanted to focus on delivering a high-quality localization that had a lot of game refinements for the Western gamers. Has anyone here played Monster Hunter before? Wow, almost all of you. Okay. Well, thank you for buying my game. Or our game, sorry. It's not my game, sorry. I'm getting a little bit egotistical here, sorry. Well, Monster Hunter is a multi-million selling franchise in Japan, but up until 4 Ultimate, we had yet to break 1 million units sold overseas. So we want to try to do something to help this game break that plateau. Secondly, we were hoping to have a lot of new faces on the team so that all of us could gain some valuable experience handling such a huge and important franchise. Finally, I want to get involved in the promotional side of things. Personally, I'm a huge Monster Hunter fan myself. And I felt I had a good idea of how to sell this game, not only to the hardcore fans, but also to people who have never heard about Monster Hunter before. So you might be wondering to yourself, okay, getting a high-quality localization, that sounds cool and all, but what exactly constitutes a high-quality localization? What's the criteria for it? Let's go back a couple years first. Let's talk about Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. We got some praise from the media and the fans. As you can see here, we got reviews from IGN and Destructoid, and they really liked the dialogue. They thought it was really very witty. They thought it was very entertaining. But personally, I felt we should have got a lot more mentions from the media. We only got, I believe, 10 to 20% mentions from the media. So it's okay, but it's not that great. And when it comes to localization, you never really get mentioned for just doing your job. If you're just doing an average job, no one's going to say anything about it. You're really going to get noticed if you're doing a really shitty job or you do a completely amazing job. And obviously I want to go for the latter rather than the former. Now, of course, you can't go to your staff and say, hey, okay, guys, we got to do a high-quality localization. Let's do it. And they're going to bust out some Pulitzer Prize-winning material. It doesn't work like that. As a localization director, you really have to have a high-level idea of what you want to do. You have to break it down into simple terms for them so that your translators, your editorial staff, they know what the expectations are. So for Monster Hunter, I talked with the people that I was going to work with, and I told them, first things first, we have to keep this short. In Japanese, dialogue and design are filled with natural redundancies that really are a real pain to get rid of in English. So we had to do our best to get rid of them. Here's an example of some NPC dialogue from one character. This is actually a pretty popular image on a lot of Monster Hunter community forums because the text is pretty entertaining. But this is actually from a tutorial segment in the game. And you can see here the Japanese is 70 lines long in dialogue, but we managed to cut it down by 2 lines. It's not that much because it's tutorial, it's instructional stuff, whatever. However, this is some NPC text that's just just random text that you can access anytime in the game. And you can see that we cut the Japanese from 32 lines to 26 lines. That's a pretty big cut in terms of how long the dialogue is. The most important thing is that we didn't actually cut out any meaning from the actual Japanese. We kept everything that was relevant in the Japanese when you translate this into English. But I told my staff that we have to keep this short. You can't get too wordy. You can't ramble on for too long. And that's one thing that they tried to do for me. Now, high quality also means that you've got to make your game quotable. You have to make it memorable without driving too far into meme country. Because if you're going to drive into meme country, you're probably never going to come back. I think I learned this lesson pretty early on in my career at Capcom because I really liked using meme references in the games I worked on. And if you're familiar with the Ace Attorney games, especially 3 and 4, you've probably seen some of my work in there. But, I started thinking about that, and I started thinking, I don't want people picking up my game on a release and saying, wow, I love these, in-style meme references. These are amazing. And then picking up the same game 4 years later, or another player picking up the games 4 years later and thinking, oh, wow, they referenced the movie 300. That really sucks right now. It kind of alienates your fan base if you do that. And, that's something that you don't want to do. I really believe, right now, we're past using these silly memes, and we can be entertaining without relying on them. So moving on, another characteristic of a well-localized game is that we have to make it very easy to understand. Monster Hunter has been plagued with terrible abbreviated terms in the past because of menus that are only designed for Japanese. So I wanted to do something about that. Here's a screenshot of the German version of Monster Hunter 3. Is there anyone who speaks German here by any chance? Okay, a couple of you guys. You could probably see the text here, but for the people who don't speak German, I'm going to highlight all of the terms that are abbreviated on the screen right now. That's all of the abbreviated stuff on one single screen. And as you can tell, it looks pretty awful. Abbreviations, they're really hard to understand. They're super tacky. They make your product look like ass. You got to do something about them. You can't have them in your game. All right, so one final issue that I wanted to address was the font that we used in 3 Ultimate. This is a screen of the Wii U version, and you can see that the font looks really nice. It's very crisp, it's easy to read. It matches the style of the game really nicely. But on the 3DS, not so much. A lot of users, they gave us feedback. They said it was very, very difficult to read. They couldn't decipher between an A and an O, for example. That's a pretty big thing in a text-heavy game like Monster Hunter. So I wanted to choose something that was more readable and that worked well with the 3DS screen and our menu restrictions at the same time. And that actually turned out to be a lot more difficult than I was anticipating. Now, a big key to achieving a high-quality localization is choosing the right partners. I would love to localize a game like Monster Hunter with a 100% internal staff. But Monster Hunter 4 was far larger in size compared to other Capcom games such as Ace Attorney and Dragon's Dogma. In the end, this game actually ended up being over 500,000 words. That's actually on par with classics such as Les Miserables and Atlas Shrugged. So you can imagine the amount of text that we would have to deal with in this kind of game. So if we were to localize this game with a 100% internal staff, we'd have to take resources away from every other Capcom game in development for a couple of years, and we might as well just rebrand ourselves the Monster Hunter Company. But luckily, we were able to partner with companies such as 84 and Binary Sonari. We worked previously with them on Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. So they handled the main base translation while we worked on managing their schedules and checking and editing their work after they delivered. So internally, the English staff on the game, they communicate with 84 to make sure that all the changes were accounted for. And our European lead at Capcom, he communicated with Binary Sonari for the same reason. And then those two internal staff members, they made sure to keep communications lines open, very smooth, and we rarely had any miscommunications about during the whole localization of the game. It was actually very, very wonderful. Both A4 and Binary, they did a really fantastic job for us. They gave us very high quality translations within schedule. They were they were never late. So that was actually awesome. And I think most importantly than that, on top of giving us really great translations, they actually gave us feedback on the game, what they wanted, what they thought would be better if they could have a say in what we could change. And I really appreciate that feedback. It really shows that they're not really just there for the money. They really care about the game's perception and how it's received overseas, because if the game is awesome and the translation's awesome, then it's a win-win for everyone. All right, moving on now. So the second goal we had for this game was to get some new staff into the series and have people other than myself working on the game. For 3 Ultimate, I was actually the only full-time staff on the Capcom side. And I had some help here and there from other internal staff, but for the most part, it was my deal. By the way, I think 3 Ultimate ended up being about 400,000 words in total, and I had to check all of it myself, so that was not fun. But anyways, for 4 Ultimate, we were really lucky enough to have more internal staff on board to help with the translation and the editing, as well as become more familiar with the series. This allowed all of us, myself included, to gain some valuable experience with a huge title without burning anyone out. I think that was one of the key things that my managers wanted to do. Additionally, Monster Hunter is a huge franchise, both in volume and in importance to the company. And personally, I really think that it's important that we don't centralize the knowledge of how to handle this kind of game just to one person. You really want to spread your knowledge out, because if you centralize this knowledge with one person and that person leaves, then you're pretty much screwed. All right, so let's go to the third goal. So as I said before, I wanted to aim for a high-quality localization with significant gameplay changes. I wanted to make it more appealing to Western gamers, and I can't really do that if I'm staying at work by myself till midnight every day checking translations. So the additional staff on the project, it actually made it possible for me to concentrate on some of my other tasks as a localization director. One of which is pitching game changes. So I looked at what Capcom did in the past when localizing other titles. I wanted to see, just how far Capcom would go if I really pushed them. And here's a really good example of what Capcom is willing to do when pushed. This is Sengoku Basara. Is anyone familiar with this series here? You're all Capcom fans. This is great. Okay, awesome. So the first Sengoku Basara, it underwent a massive change. It got a new name in North America, Devil Kings. And also, all of the characters got all these crazy name changes that affected the entire narrative of the game. And they also added significant gameplay changes as well. So at the time, the localization team felt that taking real historical figures like Nobunaga Oda and Date Mesumine and turning them into Power Ranger-esque characters with names like the Devil King and the Azure Dragon would resonate better with a Western audience. Does anyone know who these historical figures are? Are you all like Japanese history buffs or something? Like, what's going on? Okay, for the people who don't know who these characters are, let me give you an example. It's kind of like if a game developer took Abe Lincoln and George Washington and put them into a Marvel game, and instead of calling them that, they called those characters like the Bearded Colossus and Captain America. It seems kind of silly to me, and I don't think any Western developer would do that, but sorry, I'm just going to take a little sip of water here, sorry. And I didn't drop it, awesome. All right, so, oopsie, sorry, my bad. So I didn't want to go as extreme as Devil Kings, but I wanted to do something similar for Ultimate. I'm a monster, like I said, I'm a Monster Hunter fan. I have over 1,500 hours invested into this series. So, I had a good idea of what we needed to change or add, and, I was really focused on making this game better for the newcomers. So I came up with a really big wish list of stuff I wanted, and I'm going to show you some of the changes that I was going to ask for. So the first thing I want to do was I want to fix up the pacing of the early part of the game. If you're familiar with Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, at the beginning of the game, you have a couple of tutorial quests. You're asked to pick up some mushrooms, then pick up some honey, then create some potions. It's called Monster Hunter, and you're doing non-Monster Hunter hunting things, but that's okay. But by the fourth quest, you're killing some small monsters, and that's cool. But the problem with this is that you're constantly going back and forth from the hunting grounds to your village, and you have all these loading screens in between. And personally, I felt that this really killed the pacing of the game early on, and I thought this would discourage the new players from continuing on because, they're probably thinking by the third quest, when the heck am I going to actually kill some monsters? So what I decided to do was I had this proposal where instead of having 4 separate quests, we would just take all these quests into one gigantic quest, and you can do it all in one shot. So you would still do the same thing as you did in the Japanese version. You still pick the mushrooms, get the honey, get the potion, kill the monsters, but you just do it in one quest, and then off you go. And I thought that would really help the early pacing of the game. And I thought that for the hardcore fans, they could actually get through the quest really easily, maybe like in 2 minutes, and they can get to the real meat of the game. Another section that I want to fix up was something called the Hunter Notes in Japanese. You can see it here on the right side. And it's a lot of flavor text about how to play the game and some of the monsters and their background stories, but it's not that useful when you're actually playing the game. You don't really get to see a lot of this. Additionally, in the loading screens, you have some backstory about the quest that you're about to embark on, and also that's kind of just useless flavor text that you're not really going to care about after hour 200. So what I wanted to do was I want to replace these notes with diagrams of the monsters so that newcomers could understand where exactly can I hit this monster to do the most damage, and where can I hit this monster to cut off certain body parts and so on. In the loading screen, I wanted to replace that flavor text with something that was a little bit more strategic, something that would help the player understand how to beat this quest. So I had these 2 ideas, and I had a bunch of other ideas, and I set up a meeting with my producer and director, and I pitched them. So yeah, how did it go? Not so well. And I do realize the hypocrisy of me using a meme image right now when a couple minutes earlier I told you not to use memes. But I'm not driving too far into meme country. I'm just taking a little sightseeing tour. So, but anyways, they didn't say no because they didn't like the ideas. Actually, it's far from the truth. They actually really liked the ideas. They appreciated the feedback, and they really liked that I knew so much about the game. But these large-scale changes would require the game designers to have to look into the feasibility of these proposals and see if they could actually do them. In turn, this would have greatly affected our release schedule and budget, and those were non-negotiable by that time. So unfortunately, we had to abandon these ideas because we simply didn't have the time to do the necessary footwork. But that didn't mean I was going to give up my idea of getting some good changes into this game. Maybe our schedule and budget didn't work in the favor of the high-level changes that I wanted. But I decided, okay, let's change the approach a little bit. Let's go for smaller scale, cost-efficient ideas that actually directly affected the localization. I also decided to focus more on fulfilling the needs of the target audience rather than what I personally thought would actually be better for the game. I think after I had that initial meeting, I felt like maybe I was being a little bit too selfish here. Maybe I wasn't thinking about what the actual fans wanted. So, I tried to look over that myself as well. But, the big problem I had was, okay, so I had the initial meeting with the producer and the director. It didn't go so well. But, I had to figure out how am I going to approach these people to get what I want. But the producers are responsible for the overall budget and schedule. But our director, he's going to be more focused on the creative direction of the game. But I have to propose this idea to the same people at the same time, but I had to take two very different directions. So how did I do that? Well, first off, let's talk about this nice little chart here. This is from the Harvard Business Review, and it talks about management styles across 4 different cultures. And it really drives home how different decision-making is in Japan compared to other Western cultures and other Western companies. I highlighted 3 areas on this chart that I feel are really key when negotiating within a Japanese company: evaluating, deciding, and persuading. I apologize if this is kind of difficult to see. It might be a little blurry for you, but you'll be able to see this in the GDC vault anyway, so just wait till later. Now, I think this goes for any culture and any company, but I think especially in Japan, it's absolutely vital to get a buy-in from the other people in the conversation. You don't want to focus just on the decision maker. That actually might turn out to be a bad idea. What you want to do is you want to kind of go behind the scenes and get a very silent consensus from everyone before you approach the top guy. So before presenting my next ideas, what I did was I talked to the game designers, I talked to the programmers, I talked to the project managers individually about some of the reasons behind their design decisions and what I wanted to do to help improve the Western version. Now, when I did that, I didn't go up to them and say, so we have this thing here and I think it sucks and we need to change it because of reasons. I didn't do that. I think in general designers react badly to that kind of feedback, but I think in particular Japanese designers do not like that. So you kind of have to beat around the bush for a little bit. You gotta, it's kind of like a romantic courtship, so to speak. But what I did first was I asked a lot of questions. I opened dialogue with them. Very simple stuff, just like, so, why did you guys do this? How long did this take you guys to do? Just really, really simple questions to kind of break the ice and get them to feel that, I'm trying to understand things from their perspective first. And then I expressed how, if we change this just a little bit, just a tiny bit, it could really positively affect the overall product for the West. So exchanging opinions in a one-on-one environment like this, it really made it much easier to get my ideas passed through when I had a meeting with my producers and directors because I already had the consensus of the entire group. So if you're working with a Japanese company, keep in mind how decisions are made. The final decision is always going to be a top-level person, obviously. But taking the time to talk to the people below them and convincing them that your ideas are really great are going to really help your chances of success, especially if you sometimes lack the natural eloquence in a second language like myself. I don't really have eloquence in my native language, but that's a whole different story anyways. And also make sure to ask questions. Don't talk about how something is poorly designed or how to fix a problem that you see because they might not see it. Get to understand their thinking first. I think Japanese game developers in particular, they have some of the hardest jobs in the world because they have to appeal to 2 radically different cultures, and it's a near impossible task for them to pull off. So try to see things from their perspective. So you're probably thinking by now, okay, Andrew, I get this, beat around the bush a little bit, have some small talk, blah, blah, blah. But isn't this like taking the time to talk to everyone one-on-one for up to 30 minutes or an hour and then having a meeting with those very same people at the same time to get the approval, isn't that a gigantic pain in the ass? Yes, it's a gigantic pain in the ass. But it's something that you have to do because that's how the game is played sometimes. But it's just really helpful when you're going to actually formally pitch your ideas. So before I pitched those ideas, I had to gather up some information on the current Monster Hunter fans in the West. With 3 Ultimate, our player base was primarily between 19 and 34 years old. they were almost all male players who consider themselves mid to hardcore gamers. So keeping that in mind, I want to aim for changes that would make that target happy. And as luck would have it, I'm actually that target audience, so yay me. I kind of had a good idea of what kind of needs we would have to meet. And the most important of that was time, or lack thereof. Most people in this target audience, they either have a full-time job, or they're at school, or they're married, or they have kids, or they have all that plus whatever else they want to do. So the most important thing is that we have to respect their time. So with the director, I talked to him about my personal feelings when playing such an addictive, time-consuming game, and how my feelings might be shared with other gamers in that same target audience. But when I talked to the producer about the same changes, I explained how easy and quickly these changes could be implemented. And just to give you an image, this is actually happening at the same time in the same meeting. So I'm talking to the director on one side, on my left-hand side here, about this, and I'm quickly turning to the producer and giving him a totally different sales pitch. So it was kind of interesting, but we actually got a number of things fixed for the English version because of this meeting. So you guys played Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, yeah? You like this character, right? He's awesome. I love him. But let's replace him with something from Monster Hunter. So in the Japanese version of the game, you get a prompt asking you if you want to read a tutorial again. And this option defaults to yes. So if you're like me and the target audience, and you're mashing the buttons to get through the dialogue, what do you think is going to happen? Yep, you're going to repeat the tutorial over and over and over again until you realize, oh crap, I got to select no first. So, obviously I want to get this changed. But, before I pitched this idea to the director, I went to the game designers and I asked them, so, who exactly is this for? Why did you guys do this? And they told me very simply, the target audience in Japan skewed very, very young. They were actually elementary school students to high school students. And they wanted to make sure the kids had a second chance to read the instructions before moving on. And, that's cool. That's their what they want to do. And I'm not going to argue with that. But, I told them, hey, our target audience is completely different. And this would actually be a source of extreme frustration for them. So we got the okay to cut out this feature from the game, a quote-unquote feature. That's what they called it, not me. So other changes that we made were to speed up the dialogue in the game so players could get back into the action faster, or to hide certain dialogue entirely. These features made use of already existing flags in the game, so it was just a matter of building a new feature around these flags. It was very simple, very cheap and effective, and it plays to the idea that they're made for the older gamer in mind, who doesn't have time to spend reading dialogue that they actually don't want to read. We also proposed a feature to skip tutorials, and this is actually where we got a little bit more involved with the game design team. Some of the tutorials had important story-related dialogue attached to them, and they were considered unskippable by the director. So I had one of my English staff mark which tutorials were relevant to the story and which were not. And you're probably wondering, why didn't the game designers do this? Well, they were still busy working on the Japanese version of the game, so they didn't really have the time to do it. So we had to do it. So we sent off this document to the team, who checked it, and they built the feature. So it was really simple, actually. So this change plus the other two features that I mentioned, they were so easy to implement that they actually made it into the Japanese version of the game. So we kind of improved the Japanese version as well, just indirectly. So on the UI side, we did as much tweaking as possible to make sure our translations fit. Like I said before, nothing screams cheap translation more than abbreviations. This is going to be a little bit hard to see because the 3DS screen is not the sharpest. But this is a screenshot of the Japanese version. And you can see here, I just highlighted these two headers. They're really small, especially for the English and European translations. So what we did was we asked if we could expand these just a little bit so that, especially the European translations, they could fit perfectly. For menus where we couldn't fix the UI itself, we requested to replace the text with pre-existing icons. As you can see on this page here, on this screenshot here, this is actually the quest to capture a monster, and the Japanese word for capture, which is highlighted in red here, it fits perfectly into this tiny, tiny little tab-like thing. In English or in the other European languages, you could fit maybe 3 letters into here. You could probably fit 3 L's, and that's about it. And that's not going to work. So instead, we replaced it with an icon for the item that you use to actually capture the monster. And this is actually a lot more intuitive for the player because now they know, okay, to beat this quest, I need to use this item. So it really makes a lot of sense. Same thing here. This is the Japanese version of the player status screen. I had to really use a lot of red highlights here just in case people miss it. But this is a weapon's elemental power. And it's represented by a single Japanese kanji character. So yeah, that's not going to work for any other language other than Chinese and Japanese, right? Maybe in English we could put F for fire or I for ice, but who the hell is going to know what that is, right? So instead, what we did was we used already existing icons in the game. We replaced those kanji characters with a fire icon, an ice icon. And we only had to do it once for our overseas version because they're universally understood. Now you're probably thinking, okay, these changes, they seem good, they're very logical. They seem really easy to do though. Like, why are you making such a big deal about them? Well, the thing is that we actually asked for over a dozen of these changes. So you have to consider the manpower because the Japanese version of 4U was still in development. And you also, more importantly, you have to consider the memory restrictions on the 3DS. Actually, for Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate on the 3DS, we couldn't get this change done because of memory limitations. So we were really happy to get this done for 4U. Okay, moving on to a completely different topic now. Some people involved in the localization, they felt that Western gamers are going to need a little bit more guidance, especially in the early stages of the game. So we added some non-intrusive dialogue to teach the player how to craft equipment, use monsters, unique target camera, and so on. Now keep in mind that this was never in the Japanese version of the game because the Japanese community is already established. They have 3-4 million players strong. They can teach each other. They have so many resources. But in the West, we don't really have that kind of community base right now. And we're going to have a lot of new players coming in because 4 Ultimate launched alongside the new 3DS, and there's going to be a lot of people who have never played Monster Hunter before are going to pick our game up because they picked up their shiny new 3DS. So we needed to give them a little bit extra help. Most importantly, this kind of change doesn't get in the way of our core fans' enjoyment of the game because it's completely optional. We're still respecting the time of our target audience. Of course, we didn't get everything that we asked for. Here are some features that we requested for the overseas version, but they weren't considered due to either game design philosophy, cost, or schedule. Now, at the time, I really wanted these features personally, but we'd had to focus more time and money on these demands rather than the ones I just showed you, and many more. So in the end, getting a lot of smaller tweaks actually worked out for us, because they were things that not measurably, but objectively affected the localization of our game. Whereas the stuff we didn't get, we couldn't really show that it would positively affect the localization or the perception of the game overseas. It's a very subjective thing. Sorry, I'm just going to take one more sip of water before we move on. All right, 2 for 2. I didn't drop it. Cool. All right, so the final goal we had with Monster Hunter 4 was to get more involved in work that fell outside the realm of localization, but would still affect the perception of the game overseas. So we started talking about a Nintendo eShop demo pretty early on during the localization, and I had a chance to propose an idea that would see the game receive a feature-packed demo based on the retail version. This would come complete with a really nice story progression. You would also have a feature to transfer your save data from the demo to the retail version. I thought it was going to be awesome. So let me just explain some of the details to you. In my proposed demo, the player would start off in the first village of Valhabar. You would travel to the second village of Hearth, but at any time you can go to the online gathering hall and play with your friends online multiplayer. And this demo would end with an exciting first encounter with the main monster of the game, Gore Magala. He's a pretty cute character. I like him. He's nice, warm, and fuzzy. So unfortunately, this pitch didn't get approved because the additional burden on the programming team and the tight schedule were hurdles that were too tall to clear. Like I said before, the Japanese version of 4 Ultimate was still in development at this time. So we didn't really have the additional manpower to work on such a large-scale demo. Additionally, the producer and director, they really wanted to emphasize the online play and the combat system instead of the story. So instead of mine and many other proposals, we took the original Japanese event demo that was used at places like the Tokyo Game Show, the World Hobby Fair, and we used that as the base for the Western demo. The original demo allowed for 4 players to play local multiplayer using preset equipment and balanced stats. But of course, for the eShop version, we had to do a lot of work to get it up to snuff. So the first major addition was online multiplayer on top of local multiplayer and solo quests. Now, the game designers on the project, when they were talking about multiplayer, they asked for our input regarding matchmaking. And we suggested that instead of a connection-based matchmaking system, we go for a skill-based matchmaking system. This way, the new players would be together on their own quest, balanced for their level. And then the hardcore Monster Hunter fans could play at a difficulty that's more in line with the retail version. This decision to use skill-based matchmaking actually allowed us to do a lot of things for those beginners while leaving the hardcore to their own devices, because the hardcore players, they love to be left alone. So we were able to add a lot of tutorial instructions to the beginning of each quest. There were also options for optional weapon tutorials. There were waypoints on the map to show you the quickest route to a monster. And we also indicated which weapons were beginner-friendly when players were selecting their equipment. So most of you are Monster Hunter fans here, as I took a survey just a couple minutes ago. But there are 14 different weapons in this game, and choosing a weapon is like choosing a character in Street Fighter. And for beginners who are picking up this game for the very first time, how can you ask them to pick something that suits their playstyle when they've never played this game before? It's impossible. So we had to do something to push them in the right direction. So in hindsight, my pitch for a demo, it didn't get approved, but going with this shorter action-focused demo, it actually turned out to be a great hit, especially with the newcomers. The classic Monster Hunter feedback loop is getting together with your friends, encountering this gigantic beast, hitting it until it dies, carving its carcass, using that carcass to make some equipment, having this carcass-filled equipment on your shoulders, and going out to fight another monster. That sounds actually very morbid, actually, now that I think about it. But so this satisfying gameplay loop, it wouldn't have happened nearly as often in a story-intensive demo, so it really worked out for the best. So one final thing, in addition to the eShop demo pitch, I also pitched the first draft for the Did You Know Monster Hunter social media campaign. I saw that on Japanese Twitter, the social media managers for Monster Hunter were posting these cool little tips complete with screenshots on how to become a better player. And I wanted to do something for Western gamers. Instead of screenshots, I figured that using a platform like Vine or Instagram to post short videos would actually explain the tips to new players a lot better. And instead of strategies intended for mid-level players, I thought tips geared towards beginners would actually be more effective. And before I go on, I'm going to show you a short little video of how this tweet looks like if you see it on Twitter. I apologize if the sound is too loud, but it's 10 o'clock in the morning and you need a wake-up call. All right, so you can see that the tip is, did you know that you can gather bugs from a toppled Xenologer when charged up? In screenshots, you can kind of get the point pretty easily, but with the video, it's crystal clear what you need to do. So I thought it was really effective. So a couple of slides ago, I talked about how consensus is a huge thing in a Japanese company. So I want to give you another example of this. Instead of going to the producer with this idea like a lot of us would do normally, first I talked to the guy who would be helping me with this idea if it got approved, who is the media manager for the Monster Hunter franchise. So I kind of cornered him at his desk. I talked to him about the idea first. I got him to buy into the idea. And then I took the proposal to the producer, who then said yes super quickly because, hey, if this guy says yes, then I guess we have a consensus. Let's do it. It was pretty simple. Now that I think about it, I think she stopped me midway as soon as I said that guy's name. She's like, okay, no problem, go ahead. So the media manager and myself, we came up with 60 videos full of tips and tricks. The rest of the campaign was handled by the very talented people at Capcom USA. They came up with the hashtag name. They came up with this amazing retweet favorite gamification that gets longtime Monster Hunter fans into the action, as well as the newcomers. Does anyone use Twitter here? Do I have to explain how this works? No one uses Twitter here? Okay, a couple people. Okay, I'm going to explain to some of you guys here. Okay, so if you like a tweet, this gets saved into your like list, and that's you can look at that at any time. So that's what our newcomers are going to do, so that they can look at this tweet, think, okay, that's pretty interesting, save it to their like list, and if they forget about it, they can go to their like list and look at it later. However, if you're an experienced Monster Hunter fan, you're going to retweet this because you already know what this is, but you want to pay that information forward. You want to spread it to other players who might be following you. So then, if you retweet that tweet and you get a person who has never played Monster Hunter before, they're going to like it. You know, they're going to do the same thing as any beginner player would do. But if it comes across another experienced player, they're going to retweet it. So the information just gets spread and spread and spread until it hits like the entire Monster Hunter community. So it was actually a very, very clever way of making this really fun instead of just posting some information and just leaving it like that. So this campaign, it started a month after the game's release, and it lasted for approximately 6 months. It was a pretty successful campaign by all accounts. So I think we got a lot of things done with the localization of 4 Ultimate. I said before that we got about 10 to 20% of the media reviews mentioning the localization. But this time around, nearly half of the English media reviews praised the high quality of the writing and the localization. You can see a lot of reviews from places like Kotaku and GameSpot and Game Informer. They really, really love the localization of this game. I think it was a huge step up from the reviews we got with 3 Ultimate. Additionally, we also got a lot of reviews that praised the European localization as well. And so this is actually huge for us as a localization team because this is going to affect how much influence we have in future titles. The new staff on the game and myself, we got a lot of experience that's going to help us with future titles. And most importantly, I think, we earned a lot of trust with the Monster Hunter team because we went above and beyond just translating this game. We gave feedback, we suggested viable, effective tweaks. And we made the game better in general. And I think more importantly than that, we didn't try to butt heads with them and say, hey, you need to change this because this sucks or it needs to be changed. We didn't insult their decision making. We had open discussions about what worked in Japan and what worked overseas. And we tried to look at things from their perspective first before, getting down to the nitty-gritty and asking for our changes. Of course, not everything went well. We started this localization far too late. We had our initial meetings for this localization after the original Monster Hunter 4 was released in Japan. In my opinion, we should have started at least 5 to 6 months earlier to smooth out some of the problems that I'm going to get into right now. We had a lot of problems at the beginning of this game because the team just wasn't ready to get this game localized the way that we wanted to. I think they were expecting just a very basic translation job. And we wanted to have a full-on localization. And that's actually a really stark contrast from some of the titles that we worked on in the past. We didn't have a competent way of managing content. And this is going to horrify some people here who work in localization, but we did everything via Excel spreadsheet files, which had to be juggled between us, 8.4, and Binary. Yeah, Excel. I love Excel. So, we did manage to pull it off in the end. But as you can imagine, and like I said before, this is a game that's over 500,000 words large. And leaving things up to Microsoft Excel, that's going to end in horrifically bad ways. So don't do it, please. Yes. Additionally, we didn't have any specific software to help with the localization. We didn't use any translation memory software. We only had these simple tools for version control and to check for updates. And the translators had to constantly refer to a separate Excel spreadsheet for their glossary. And this glossary right now is over 2,000 terms long. So you can imagine just the kind of nightmare you're going to have when you're just working with Excel. But you know what? These are the things that we're going to focus on improving the next time around. We've already developed translation memory software for internal use. And we have a set of tools that are going to be great for managing file content. And as always, as a team, we're going to continue to push for gameplay and narrative improvements so that our internal teams can compete with the best studios in the world. And that includes pushing to make sure that a localization director is in place with the team, even at the pre-production stage. So I know we covered a lot of ground today, and I might have stumbled over my words a little bit. So here's what I hope you can take away from this session. Remember that a localization team or your localization director can be huge boons when entering a foreign market. Their work and smart design decisions can make your localization look world-class, and that's just going to make it more appealing to players in that market. I know that there's a tendency for people to try to strong-arm their way whenever possible, but personally, in my experience in Japan, I've always found more success in adapting to the people around you. You can still get what you want, but you might have to play the game just a little bit differently than what you're used to. Finally, if you want something changed and you're not the one making the decision, especially in Japan, you're going to find more success by focusing on the measurable tangibles rather than stuff that is, subjectively better for the game. Okay. Also, I have one more key takeaway. Sorry, my bad. And of course, that is, don't give up. Okay, so, I know that a lot, with a game like Monster Hunter, it takes a long time to localize it. And, you're going to feel down, you're going to start to get negative. But, keep your head up, stay positive. Eventually, you're going to arrive at your destination, but you just might have to take a couple of detours along the way. And before we start open QA, I just want to give a couple shout outs to some people. I want to say thank you very much to the localization team on Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Without their hard work, I probably would not be here today because I would probably be fired. Thank you very much to my managers who helped me along the way with this project. Two of them are sitting in the front here. Please tell them good things about me so I can get a bonus, please. And thank you very much to the Monster Hunter teams at Capcom USA and Capcom Europe for constantly supporting the community. We always keep in contact somehow, and I really appreciate the feedback they give me. All right, everyone, thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please feel free to come to the mic.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your talk. You mentioned earlier that Japanese developers and game designers were having trouble, not trouble, but had challenges developing their game for both markets. Do you find that Japanese game designers are looking more towards Western markets as well as a primary concern, or is it mostly still the Japanese market and then other localization is great?
I can't speak for other Japanese companies. I can only speak for the people that I work with, but I know that most of the game designers that I work with play almost all Western games right now, and they don't really play Japanese games. They obviously are concerned about the Japanese market, but I know that the focus right now is on the West. So they're trying to, take their knowledge of Japanese games and kind of leaving it to the side, and then focusing on what the Western sensibilities are, so that they can improve that aspect of their skill set.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Andrew, great presentation. Thank you. What are some of the things you're going to do to make sure that the localization team, so let's say the other languages that you don't master as well as English, are going to be on par with what you're getting for English?
Personally, I would love to have more internal staff for those languages that we don't cover right now, but that's not my decision. That's the decision of my managers. So if they feel like we have the budget and the capacity to add, for example, let's say a Russian translator in-house, then they're probably going to do that. And just by having that person in-house, it's going to significantly improve the localization quality.
Thanks.
No problem.
Thank you for being here today.
No, thank you.
I know with a lot of, actually pretty much all languages, there's always innuendos or secondary meanings or puns that are very specific to that language.
Mm-hmm.
I know Japanese is rife with them. Russian has a lot. English has a lot. And do you have a particular flow for making sure the humor of those is maintained in the translations?
Yeah. Actually, when we're localizing game, especially on the English side, we keep a lot of notes on some of the jokes and references that we use, so that the translators can refer to those and try to think of alternatives that best suit their languages. And sometimes, especially if they don't understand it, they're always free to ask us, what does this mean? I don't really get this, this saying here. Mm-hmm. And especially with the team that we have now, it's pretty large, so they can pretty much ask any staff, I don't get this joke. Can you please explain to me? And they usually get the answer within a couple minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
First of all, really good talk.
Thank you.
Secondly, I was curious about one thing you proposed doing in one of the slides there with taking out the flavor text for the monsters and whatnot. I understand the logic, but were you concerned at all about pushback from more veteran players or players familiar with the Japanese version? Because removing that kind of content, sort of quote unquote, tends to drive a certain segment of most game fandoms completely berserko.
Okay, well, I can't just cut content nilly-willy as I want.
Yeah.
Obviously, I got to get the approval of the directors and all that. But my personal mission for this game was to make this better for new players. The monster community, we have a sizable community right now in the West, but we need to expand. Personally, I would love this community to be as big as the Japanese community, which is like 3 to 4 million strong right now. And the only way to do that is to get more players into the game and to get them accustomed to the game. So if it's an argument between keeping the flavor text versus adding more features that help a new player get into the game better, then obviously I'm going to go for that. Now, if I do decide that, I have to talk to my director and my producer to get this approved. And if they don't feel like that's a good decision, then they're going to say no, and the decision is nixed. But if they do say yes, then I have their full blessing. And if people online want to complain about it, I can just simply say, hey, the director, he likes this idea, so that's why we did it.
Okay. And also, having worked on a 3 million character game without a localization term Bible, I feel your localizer's pain.
Yes, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one question on the tools, actually. Was there any reason why you didn't use MemoQ or WordB, for example?
Pardon me, I couldn't hear you, sorry.
Was there a reason why you didn't use MemoQ or WordB as far as your localization tool for handling the translation?
I think the reason was that we would, especially, I didn't really touch on this in my talk, but there's a lot of bureaucracy in a Japanese company. So to get that kind of software, we would have to jump through a lot of hoops, and that might not have been available to us in time for the localization. So we just made the decision to just go with it. But for the most part, it actually worked out fine because this game is a 10-year-old franchise, so there is a lot of legacy text that we can copy and paste in. So it was really easy. But it was tough, so that's why we actually developed our own software in-house afterwards.
Great, thank you. And the other question, is you talk about cultural adaptation, right? And have you been thinking about adapting directly from Japanese to French, German, Italian, and Spanish, as opposed to go from the English, for example?
We usually go from Japanese to English and then English to the European languages.
But do you think there would be a value to go directly from Japanese, or do you
I think in terms of schedule it might be, but I don't really know. I would really have to think about that. But in terms of adapting, I think it's much easier to go from the English language to the European languages because they are very similar in structure a lot of times, and we do share a lot of the same culture. So it's a lot easier to adapt from English to European languages. But yeah, like I said, it might be better for schedule, but I don't think it would be better. But that's something that you would actually have to look into a little bit more. So,
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for your talk today.
No problem.
So my question is about, the fans' responses and taking feedback from fans. I think, obviously, you yourself are a fan of Monster Hunter, so I think that you already have a pretty good idea of what the fans want. But I was wondering, when pitching ideas and making changes to the localized version, how do you keep, for example, when you're proposing an idea to the producers or directors, what kind of information or social media things you use in order to pitch your ideas regarding how much feedback from fans you should or should not take?
Well, I do lurk in a lot of forums, and I do lurk on social media a lot. So I have a huge text file on my computer right now, which is just copy and paste of tons and tons of comments from the users. So whenever I need to, pitch an idea, I, just go through that text list and find some of the comments that I really would like to share with the producer and director. I would say that I would use maybe if I was going to put this into a presentation, I might dedicate about 10 to 20% of my time for the user comments, and the rest of the time will be my personal comments on the feasibility and the viability of those changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, great talk. I wanted to get your input about variations on some European languages, like for example in Latin America, Spanish is different from Spain Spanish, and Portuguese from Brazil's. I mean, I wanted to know what was your take on it? What did you work, or if you just?
Okay, for this game, we did just the European versions of French and Spanish. We didn't do, to my knowledge, we didn't do any Brazilian, Portuguese, or Latin American Spanish or anything like that. I believe we did have some talks about it, but at the time, it's not really my decision. That's something that's left up to my managers as well as the producers on the game. If they want it, then I have to do it. So I don't really have a say in that. It's something that's something out of my pay scale. So.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi. Thanks for the talk. It was really good.
Thank you.
Just a really quick question as a fan. Are you involved in the localization for Monster Hunter Cross or Generations? Is it going to be?
I am not the localization director for Monster Hunter Generations. No, I am helping out with it. But actually, it's kind of funny because in my presentation today, I said that we needed to spread the knowledge a little bit and nurture our internal staff. One of the people that were involved in the English version of Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, he's actually now the localization director of Monster Hunter Generations. And personally, I think he's doing a really good job of it because it's a gigantic title and it's something that's really hard to grasp until you're taking the reins of it. But I am helping him out here and there whenever he needs some assistance. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, I'll go ahead and get one more really quick question in then. I approve of that idea of getting rid of a lot of the tutorial prompts and whatnot to help speed up the game flow. Did you also consider doing any fiddling with the number of text boxes or things like the speed at which text renders on the screen and whatnot to make it even more snappy? What was there?
Actually, yeah. Actually, in one of the slides I mentioned that you can fast forward through the text a little bit faster. That's actually the option. So usually the text kind of displays character by character. Yeah. But the option, if you switch it on and off, it actually displays all the text at the same time. So it's actually much faster in practice. Also, for this game, by design, we were allowed to add or subtract as many text boxes as we want to, which is why I told my staff, not my staff, but my team I was working with, to try to keep it as short as possible because we had the option of deleting as many text boxes as we wanted to.
Oh, good. I approve of that.
Thank you.
like games that do that. So.
I'll tell the designers about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. No more questions? Cool. All right. Thank you very much.